Hello, everybody. Welcome to Transform Yourself, Inspire Others podcast number 3. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Tiffany Goulet. She is a yoga teacher, but she's also an educationist. She's into education as a teacher, as a supervisor since over 18 years. She's a mom of 2 beautiful, talented daughters who are 11 years old. Tiff did teacher training with me, I think 5 years ago. And since then, she's looking at bringing together yoga and self-regulation, sensory regulation, creating harmony, balance in family, school, individual life. So she's working on these beautiful themes in her life. So I would love all of us to hear from Tiff. So Tiff, welcome. I was a little lost for words because I did not know how much to say about you, because there's so much that you are doing and you have done. So I had to mentally, pause and allow you to speak. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So tell us, Tiff, what do you do? And just give us a little brief about your work in general.
Okay, so I'm a teacher by training. I've been teaching for 18 years. I've taught, intermediate students, so grade 7, 8, all the way down to kindergarten, where I spent the last 7 years. I'm working in my school board now, so not in a classroom, but supporting teachers as an experiential learning teacher in my school board. So that's what I do kind of on the professional side. I'm a mom of twins, as Prasad mentioned, and something that I'm really passionate about is supporting children to be well regulated, and to be well in their life. Because, when I came to the yoga teacher training 5 years ago, I was coming out of a classroom where I felt there were a lot of signs of dysregulation. And, I thought it was exclusive to my situation. But as I started looking around and talking to people, it wasn't a one-off for that class. It's happening in classrooms and families across our province, across our country. And then when I start to look at other countries, I'm seeing parents burning out, I'm seeing educators burning out, and I'm seeing our kids struggle. So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing, is in supporting kids and families and teachers.
Great. You mentioned the word regulation. What do you actually mean by the term regulation? Could you just tell us a little more about that?
Sure. So the way I see self-regulation is really in understanding the stress that you're facing, responding and recovering from that. So, on any given day, everybody experiences different stress in their life, children and adults. But strong self-regulation skills mean that we can respond to that stress and recover. Where I think we're struggling is that we're recognizing the stress, but we're missing that second piece where we have really good skills to respond to the stress and recover in the kids and the adults. Because that year, I actually came to the teacher training very, very burnt out. So I was missing those skills myself.
So you are a true example of transform yourself, inspire others.
Yes, I would say that I had to learn it for myself before I could share it with others.
So Tiff, you've been into education since last 18 years, as we know. Could you just just from my curiosity, I just want to know how the environment in the classroom has changed, say, over a decade. Like, how was the classroom in 2010 as opposed to 2021? I mean, in terms of the stress on the kids and stress on the parents and their regulatory
Yeah,
capacity. Could you just give us a view on that?
sure. Yeah, I would say when I first started, there was always stress.
Yeah.
I don't know if people were managing it better, or maybe that there weren't as many stressors for kids. And then when I started in kindergarten, it was 2013.
Okay.
And I remember even in 5 years, I was starting to notice a huge shift in what I was seeing in kids and how they were able to cope. From 2013 to 2018 or so, I was starting to see a really big difference. Lots of kids really struggling, lashing out, crying, having anxiety, lots of those things that we were starting to recognize as excessive stress. And so I would say that in the last 18 years, it's really changed, where we always have had, some students struggling. Yes. I would say it's increasing. The numbers that are coming out of Canadian Mental Health Association is that 1 in 5 children and youth are meeting with mental health challenges. And so we know that early identification and intervention is really critical, because when you look at adults who are meeting with mental health challenges, they're saying that 70% is rooted in what happens in those, their childhood.
Okay.
So that's why my focus is so much on the kids, because I really feel that if we can support kids to be well and to have these skills, maybe we can support a reduction in those numbers.
Yes.
But I also know that that self-regulation and well-being sets the stage for everything else. Because when I was teaching in kindergarten, we didn't have subjects. What we had were 4 frames. So literacy and math, we had problem solving and innovation, belonging and contributing, and self-regulation and well-being. That's kind of how we divided the curriculum. But if you were strong in something like math, if you were weak in something like math, you could be strong in those other areas.
Yes.
But if you struggled in that area of self-regulation and well-being, it really made the rest of the pieces much harder to access. So that's why my focus is so much on that. And I see, in the last 10 years for sure, such an increased need. And now with the pandemic, I can't even imagine what those numbers will be like when they do another survey about it.
Wow. Could you tell us, like, let's say, just to make us a little more positive about how things are now, could you just tell us, say, a little like a case study of some self-regulatory workshop, either done with students or teachers or parent group, and you saw like some amount of change in their mindset or their habits?
Yes. So I think about 2 or 3 years ago, we did a really big project at our school. So we received some funding. I wrote a program, and we got some funding to study how mindfulness can support self-regulation. So we were training our teachers in practices like breathing, some relaxation practices. We were helping them to understand how the brain works, how it responds to stress. And over the course of the year, we were training teachers and encouraging them to kind of implement these practices in their life, but also in their class. And what we saw was that was able to start to spread into classrooms. to
Okay.
support kids. We were starting to see differences in behavior with children. They were learning coping strategies. So they were kind of embodying these practices, taking them home. But one of the most interesting things was that some of the data that came out of that project was that when we asked the adult their stress level from the start to the end of the project, on a scale of 1 to 10, almost everybody said it was reduced by 2 to 3 points.
Great.
Which means that if we can reduce the stress for the adult, they can support that for the kids.
Yes.
Because co-regulation is so incredibly based on the well-being of the adult.
And it's like, kids are most of the time with the parents, right? They come to the school for a limited amount of time and then they go back home. And so if the parents, if the guardians could learn some self-regulation methodologies or tactics themselves, it would really create a good harmonious environment at home, right? In the family.
Yes. I think that's so key because being the caregiver is exhausting, no matter the role, being the parent, being a, caregiver for for your parent, all of that takes a lot of energy. And when you think about what it takes to support someone else through challenging times, you need to be that calm, centered place. So your own practice, your own regulation is honestly, I think that's the biggest key. If there was something that we could focus on, I really think that, making sure that you're well and grounded in order to be able to support those around you. I think that's the biggest factor.
Well, that's why we call this transform yourself, inspire others, because you may want to transform others, but somewhere they should be ready, and you should also be ready to support them. You should have enough resources and capabilities and skills to hold them when they fall. So as you said, the caregiver should be strong and empowered to care.
And that's exactly where I was when I came to the training, because I kept saying, I need to figure out how to help all of these people. They're all struggling, but without the realization that such a key piece was in, supporting myself to be well so that I could support them.
Absolutely. This is so important because like what you said, caregiving is exhausting.
Yes. And right now, for sure.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and we all are in some senses caregivers to someone. It's not just parents, it's not just teachers, even a sales manager who leads a team of 50 people is in a way it's caregiver. So we have to, all of us, I feel, look at ourselves as a caregiver, because ultimately we live in a social setup. Humanity all has a social setup. Somewhere we are caregiving to someone else.
And I think especially right now, we are seeing such a need to lean on other people. So that, that well-being of yourself is so important.
Absolutely. So Tiff, if you could give us, because I know many parents would be listening to this podcast, if you could give us, say, 3 tips for parents to manage the home environment better, create a more harmonious, more mindful family setup, what would it be? Because I know you have been gradually implementing some steps in your family, right, over the years. So just talk us through about this process of how to implement things in a family setup.
Yeah, it's a slow process. It's not something that you can do today and then have that change tomorrow, because actually that would probably be the opposite. That would create a lot of stress for the other people who might not be there yet. So think about it as, you know, a gradual process, you know, keeping little bits of progress as you journey on. You know, as we talked about, I think the biggest thing is to focus on your practice.
Yes.
Even if that's the only thing that you start with, it's amazing how much will flow from that. When we talk about supporting kids, even partners, you know, my husband works at the hospital, really busy, high stress environment often. So you can't lend calm if you don't have calm. So my own practice is a really big factor in supporting the people in my house. But the other thing too is that when my children see me taking time to do my practice, seeing me, you know, do a breath work, or even doing a small silence, that becomes a norm. You know, because I think sometimes we're looking for these things, but kind of out of a context. So when a kid is, you know, dysregulated, we're like, oh, I need to try this breathing strategy. But if you've seen the breathing practice so many times, very normal. So that would be one thing, is that focus on your practice and use that to support and to teach. But other things that I think are really important are to spend time together as a family. The basis of the relationship is such a key factor in feeling that sense of safety and security, which helps self-regulation. So, you know, taking time and making time to be with your kids is key, and to be present in those experiences, because it's very easy to hear our phone and pick up the phone, and then as soon as we've done that, that connection is kind of lost. So something that we're trying at our house is going to be screen-free Sundays.
Oh, wow.
And that actually came from my husband. So we're at a point now where he's, you know, seeing the importance of, you know, reducing some of these sensory stimulations that are really pulling our attention away.
So what did you say? Screen-free Sundays?
Screen-free Sundays.
So what are the main points of this screen-free Sunday?
So we won't have access to screens unless he's on call. Then he gets a pass for that. But so no TV, no social media on Sundays. Just time together to focus on, you know, being connected with each other, but also having that quiet time for ourselves. Because I think that's important for kids to develop practices that are important to them and regulating to them. You know, when we're always attached to a device or to a screen, we don't always have that time to explore. You know, one of my girls loves to write. She is such I think someday she might write something important, but she loves to write. And the other one, you know, loves to be with our pets, and they enjoy art and being outside. And so I think that's an important purpose for the screen-free Sunday. Beautiful. And then other things we can do in our home, you know, thinking about how overstimulating the environment can be, noise and lighting, and, you know, all of those little tiny things, spending time outside. Outside is naturally regulating, and it's proven to be regulating for the kids just as much as the adults, especially over the past year. So I think that those are things that we can do, you know, in our homes to help our kids. And one of the most important things that I think is something to remember is that each person in your home is an individual on their journey, and that you have to kind of honor who they are and where they're at. So the things that might work for me might not work for my girls, but that
this is big.
Yes. And I feel like I was given twins to learn that exact thing, because you know, as an early, like when I was parenting in the younger years, I was like, sweet, I've got twins. Like I'm just going to do the exact same thing. Like no, it is not like that at all. In fact, they're polar opposite. So the way I parent one is different than how I parent the other. And the same thing when I'm supporting them with their their well-being and self-regulation, one needs a very different approach than the other one. So I think that's
respecting individuality. So
it's important. And I think too, when you respect individuality at a young age, you help them to respect their own individuality.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess somewhere it also validates their uniqueness. You know, like, you know, they see that, you know, my mom treats me specially for what I have special in me, you know. And as they perhaps as they grow up and as teenagers where everybody wants to look like the other person, it's good to know or have a validated sense that I'm part of the group, but I have my unique qualities that I can shine with, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. For sure.
Wow, so much input today. Tiff, one more. I mean, I have so many questions. Perhaps we'll have to do one more episode because these topics are also close to my heart. But you know, you are an educationist. I'm into education myself. My mom was a principal of a school. My grandfather was into education. What do you feel our modern education system needs to focus on henceforth, looking at the current scenario of you know, all this distraction and alternate facts and confusion and all this? What do you think our education system needs to focus on? I mean, where do you see yoga and practices of yoga coming in?
So I would say that what I think our education system needs is not to get more complicated, which it tends to. It's, you know, reaching for programming and trying to do all of these things. I actually think it needs to go the opposite way. And I think it really needs to simplify. I think we need to understand more about the individual that is in that classroom, truly understand people, and then understand how to support people in their learning in a holistic way, not just the cognitive brain work or the social emotional learning as separate things, but as this way that we are going to support and elevate the person. And I think it's coming, but I can tell you that change and growth and progress in systems, from what I've seen so far, is very, very slow. So, and that's something that I'm hoping to be able to support in my school board. Now that I'm out of a classroom and into the board office, part of my work is with grade 7, 8, working on their pathways for their future. And that's a big piece of it, is understanding who you are and what opportunities you have and how you can use all of that for your own growth and for your own future.
Wow.
That's what I would say. I feel like we always think that more is better, but I think we have to scale back and get really, really good at, you know, supporting the individual, because if we can support the individual properly, we can then add all of those pieces on and do it well.
As educators, we have a big role to play in designing the society of the future, right?
Yeah. And it's really, you know, I think when you have people who see things that way, they can support others to start to see things in that same way. And it makes such beautiful programming. You know, even with the work that I'm doing with grade 7, 8, I remember when I was receiving that, and it was, you know, like, okay, go explore all of these jobs. And it was the same jobs that were coming up and that were highlighted all the time. And the way we're looking at it now is we're helping kids to identify things like their interests and their personality and, you know, what things they love to do and how they could tie that into their future. So we're not just looking at the best job, the highest paying job, but we're looking at who are you and what do you want to share with the world. So I think it's changing, but it's got a ways to go.
Correct. So basically we are talking about changing the idea or the concept of success, right? I mean, success that is usually measured in what kind of degrees you have. I remember just yesterday we were speaking of titles and degrees, right?
Always.
PhD is better than masters, and double PhD is more intelligent.
The more letters, the better, right?
Yes, absolutely. Also, the car that you drive and the size of your house. You know, I mean, even in the corporate sector, since last decade, they are discussing EQ.
Yes.
You know, and I'm sure there's a lot of scope for this EQ, emotional quotient, to come in our education system as well. So Tiff,
yeah, we're looking at a lot of.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just saying, and on the childhood end, we're looking at how to build social emotional learning, how to help kids to develop those skills.
Yeah.
You know, to support them through their life. Really, you need those skills. So
yeah. So Tiff, about you, how have you changed personally? Just let us into your personal transformation. I mean, you are a caregiver, so how has your experience shaped your teaching?
Well, if you looked at it from the outside, you would think that everything is the same, like same house, same kids, same husband, same minivan. But when the way I feel in all of those roles has really changed. The way I, understanding myself and having gone through a lot of this process, I can better understand other people.
Yeah.
So when I see my children in need, I have a sense of what they need, how I can support them from a place of peace.
Yeah.
And so that would be a big one. So being able to be, rooted in my own self and peaceful in all of these interactions. But also I feel like I have a lot of clarity in what I really, really believe and want as a parent and as an educator. And I feel like in the last 5 years, I went from having all of these ideas that other people had told me about education, and I've really zeroed it in on this is what I believe about education. This is what I want to work on. And the work is just, going forward, progressing, pieces at a time. And the same with parenting as well. So I would say that's how I've changed, being more relaxed in all of the interactions, able to be there for people, but also very clear on how I want to do that.
And has your clarity helped you become a little more, effortless in the way you parent, the way you teach?
I think that, my study in yoga has really helped me to, understand my own mind. So then I can understand, is this real? Is this an issue? Is this something that I need to, really try to tackle? But also, I think that I see more beauty in simplicity. I used to be the person who was like, my 4-year-olds were in 5 different things and we were going all the time, and I need to give them every single opportunity because that's how they're going to be amazing. And we're very much the opposite now. We have a couple activities that we do, grades on report cards. They're good, but I really want you to be well. I want you to do things that you love. I want you to be passionate about, your own learning. So very, very different. And I think that clarity helps me to better continue on my own journey, but also to guide my girls on their journey.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, this is what I call the waterfall of inspiration, you know, that flows from generation to generation to generation. I mean, you know, now this becomes the belief system of your daughters, and then that will be strengthened even more, reinforced in the next generation. So this is,
and it's so sweet when you see it coming out of their mouth, when you see yourself, you know, I mean, sometimes we see ourselves in not the best light coming out of our kids, but you know, the other day we had to give our dog a bath. He had played outside in the mud, and he's a big 90-pound German Shepherd. So we were giving him a bath, and he's so scared of water, so scared of being in the tub. And one of my girls was just holding him, and she said, "It's okay, buddy. I got you. I'm going to help you through all your emotions." And I thought, so sweet. You know, you do that for them enough, and then they do it for the next person.
Absolutely. And then it doesn't have to be like forced, you know, it just becomes natural. Like you didn't have to tell her, you know, hold him, assure him. No, it just happened naturally.
It is. And I think that's the piece where your own practice and you living this, that's where such a huge piece of the transfer happens, just in those authentic, you know, interactions on a daily basis. Someone spills the milk. No problem. I'm going to help you to clean that up. You know, you had a hard time with a test. That's okay. We've got this, you know, study a little bit more for the next one, you know, whatever it is, just very relaxed in that.
And something incredible that I usually see is it doesn't always have to be big steps, you know, going back to what we said, you know, it's just little tweaking, as they say, a little tweak in a, you know, some attitude or little different vision in some way can really magnify over a period of time, right?
And it's like, I remember that visual that you had shown with the two ladders, where you know, we always think it's these huge steps that are going to get us to the end result faster, but it's actually in those tiny little incremental changes. One little thing at a time will get you there.
Absolutely. Wow. So Tiff, one last recommendation to parents. Just one recommendation. What would you recommend to them as a educationist, as a mom, as a teacher? If you could summarize your recommendation in one sentence.
I would say find consistency in doing what you need to do to be well. Consistency is the key.
Wow.
We often, as caregivers or educators, we wait until we're burnt out. Our normal, you know, saying is, I just have to get through to the weekend. I just have to get through to the break. Don't wait. The small investment, 5 minutes, you know, sometime during the day in yourself, to be with yourself, is the best prevention for that burnout. So I would say that finding something and sticking to it would be the best advice that I can give. And it's hard because we always put everybody else first, but it's very much that, you know, you need to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Absolutely.
It's, you know, it's so true, not just in flight, but in real life as well.
Absolutely. Fill your cup first, right?
Yes. And I think that's a mindset thing that we need to try to shift, because, you know, as a mom, at the start of, you know, this whole thing, I felt so guilty. I felt judged, you know, for taking time to myself, you know, because people perceive it as you're
selfish.
being selfish. And I remember you said it's not selfish, it's being centered in yourself.
Yeah.
And when I understood that if I could be centered in myself, I can withstand whatever storms I need to withstand.
Absolutely.
But it took that investment and that consistency in order to do that.
Yes. Yes.
And people adapt around us.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, at the start, I couldn't see that that was possible. And now, you know, I've gone on yoga teacher training.
This is where I feel it's like an ecosystem, one variable changes and the other variable has to adjust,
Yeah.
So if the mom or the father or anybody, any person, if they adjust one variable, then the whole ecosystem of the family will adjust. And that's the beauty.
And we have to relax as the people in charge to let that ecosystem adjust as it needs to. It will not necessarily be exactly as I left it, but it will adjust and it will continue.
Yes. But isn't this amazing, Tiff, that with understanding of yoga and with practice and doing your practice, doing your sadhana, you see how our vision of things change. Like how you said, allowing the ecosystem to find its own balance. You do your tweaking, but then the ecosystem as a whole, as an organism as a whole, is going to take its time to normalize its functioning. And that is, the vision of yogi. You do your part, and then the ecosystem takes over, whatever the ecosystem may be, family or political ecosystem, economic ecosystem, all systems will take time to find their balance. Wow.
Yes. Yeah, and you do your part and everybody else will come into it, at their time. It also feels like I don't need to force.
Yes.
We always used to think, I need to change everybody. I need to do this. I need to change the system. I do my part, and then hopefully people and things will adjust as they need to.
Yes, absolutely.
So much more relaxed in all of those roles.
Wow. Yeah, somewhere this is also a quality of detachment. No? I mean, I do my part, and then the system takes over, so I can pull back. I can, step back and, like parenting. I did the best as I could as a parent. Now it's my children's job to find their balance, their life, create their own little life around themselves. Yeah. Beautiful. So Tiff, thanks a lot. I'm definitely I feel this conversation is not ended. So I would love
to have
one. Yeah, it can go on and on. We could have a whole episode on how COVID and work from home and schooling from home and all changed the mindset. And since the sensory mental angle of a parent and of a teacher, I think one more episode or a few more episodes are definitely in the wings.
Oh, I'd love to join again. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks so much.
And thank you so much for being my teacher.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure. It always feels it's little like a parent, like to see the student do their part and grow. The waterfall flows.
Yes, exactly. And so much of what I do with my kids or with kids in my classroom is exactly what you've done as my support and my teacher. It's just same, different situation.
That's the beauty. That's that transference, as perhaps Freud would say. The transference doesn't always have to be negative. Transference. The term transference has usually been given a negative connotation, but the transference could also be positive. It could also be liberational transference. So
yes, I totally agree. And
great.
It's so beautiful when it is.
Yes. So Tiff, thanks a lot again. we'll sign off with a promise to the listeners, to the audience, that we will definitely do one more episode in
Perfect.
which we will dig a little deeper. I think next episode, whenever that would be, we should dig a little deeper on the sensory cognitive changes that have taken place amongst the teachers, parents, and children, and how those sensory cognitive changes can be transformed for a harmonious family, society, or whatever. Yeah,
for sure. I think that'll be a great chat, and needed for sure. This right now during this.
Because I'm sure the listeners are going to hear and try to implement, so the waterfall that we have started is going to have some little tributaries running around here and there. So
awesome. Well, I'm so thankful that you invited me on today.
Thanks so much. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.